What's good, YouTube? Dre here with Different Gaming. I wanted to go over this ruling video that MST.TV did on his channel. Um, his link to his channel will be in the description below. But for a lot of people, well, a lot of players, um, transaction rollback just came out. Um, just like me, I really haven't looked into the card and I really don't know much about the card. So this is who I go to whenever I need ruling questions answered without even asking anybody else. I just go straight to MST.
Today's ruling video is all about transaction rollback, or fake feather, or trap of darkness, or labyrinth barrage. They're the same thing. It's a trap card copying the activated effect of a different trap card. Hey guys, this is Tom Box, and welcome to the ruling video. I know why you're here, because you don't want to look like the fool when you're arguing with an inferior duelist about transaction rollback. I know it's going to happen because there's a lot of complexity to this card. How does the copying work? What can you copy? What can't you copy? How does it even resolve? All that will be answered within the 4 ruling questions that I'm going to give you. I'm going to see how you guys will tackle this just to see who's actually going to be the fool when it comes to this particular question. And if you're a judge, how are you going to answer it? But anything related to transaction rollback will be in this video. So if you're going to enjoy this one, hit that thumbs up button, hit subscribe, ding that notification bell, and let's go through some transaction rollback. Question number 1, this is pretty basic. We have transaction rollback in the graveyard with a Horn of the Phantom Beast. If you guys don't know what Horn of the Phantom Beast does, it targets one beast or beast warrior monster you control. Equip this card to that target, it gains 800 attack. Pretty basic stuff, and if the equipped monster destroys opponent's monster by battle and sends it to the graveyard, you get to draw 1 card. That part of the effect is mandatory, which is also pretty nice. Now, so on the field, there's a Reborn Tengu, which is a beast warrior, so Horn of the Phantom Beast technically can target it to give it that nice, sweet 800 boost. And on the opposing side, there is a 1700 attack Airlifter. Consider it as a vanilla, as it's not relevant to this case. So we're going to proceed into the battle phase. Player A declares an attack with the Reborn Tengu into the Airlifter, and on attack declaration, player A goes, oh, I'm going to pay half my life points to draw that 1 card, so I'm going to banish the transaction rollback, pay half our life points, and target the Horn of the Phantom Beast. And in turn, during the resolution, he attempts to target his own monster and then gets the attack boost. However, player B just counters the argument here by saying, hey, you can't target a card during resolution. That doesn't make any sense. So they have an argument, they call a judge. Who's right, who's wrong, who's the actual fool in this particular scenario? You have 5 seconds to answer. And this one's, yeah, I know, it's a little bit tricky. 4, 3.
I'll pause it at 3 so y'all get a chance to answer in the comment section below. But let's look up transaction rollback. If your life is target 1 or more trap in your opponent's graveyard, this effect becomes that card's activation effect. You can banish this card from your graveyard, pay half your life points, target 1 or more trap in your graveyard, and this becomes that effect. Okay. So banish transaction target. Activation effect would be target 1 beast warrior on your side of the field. It wouldn't resolve. You can't do that.
2, 1, 0. There.
I guess the activation effect that it's copying. So target. I mean, you can target, but it becomes an equip. And transaction rollback is not down here.
Both fools for different reasons. Well, player A's reason is that he targeted an illegal card. Horn of the Phantom Beast, yes, is a normal trap card. However, this particular trap card converts itself into an equip. It's an equip card, and this card also references itself. Equip this card to that target. Now, when you banish the transaction rollback, you're not going to be able to equip the card. So that's pretty simple, pretty direct, and therefore the Horn of the Phantom Beast became an illegal target. And an old precedent to this would be Trap of Darkness and Kunai with Chain. Kunai with Chain has two effects. You can copy Kunai with Chain's battle position changing effect, however, you cannot use it to gain 500 attack and equip it to the monster. That part of the effect is basically not allowed. So with that said, you can't basically equip cards and copy the equip cards through the copying effect of a trap card. Sorry, that was a little bit wordy there. Now, what about player B? Why was player B the fool? Well, he said that you can't resolve and target a card, but that would basically shut out 90% of all the cards you can attempt to use with transaction rollback. So how does transaction rollback resolve? Essentially, when you activate transaction rollback's copying effect, okay, so you say use the graveyard effect, you banish it, pay half your life, target a card. We're going to switch up the card now with Raigeki Break, a very basic trap card that destroys a card on the field, but you do need to target. Now note, when you copy the effect of an activated effect of a trap card,
There's a comma after the discard one card. But from what I've been hearing, transaction rollback, if there's a cost, you don't pay the cost.
you don't pay the cost. So you don't, discard cards, you don't pay life, you don't send anything to the graveyard, you just have to perform the activation. But what about the targeting? Isn't targeting part of the cost? No, not everything before the semicolon is a cost. Everything you have to do when activating the card is written before the semicolon. That's the attempting of the activation, which includes targeting, declaring card types, choosing a card effect if it says activate one of these following effects. Now, when copying effect, you don't pay cost, but you still need to target and do all the declarations. So if there's no valid targets, you cannot activate the card or effect. Now, here's an extra note. When you're activating cards in general, if you can't pay the cost, obviously you can't activate the card. If you can't do everything before the semicolon, you also cannot activate the card, with one exception. If you have a mandatory effect, a trigger effect such as Trap Tricks Myrmilia that requires targeting, but if there's no targets, you would basically just skip the targeting, and then it would resolve with no effect. It still activates, though. So when you banish transaction rollback, pay half your life, target Raigeki Break, when you target the Raigeki Break, you would also need to target for Raigeki Break as well. So you would banish transaction rollback, target Raigeki Break, and through that, within the same timing, you would also target a card on the field. Does that make sense to you guys? And so when you resolve transaction rollback, you'll be able to destroy the card. In the case where you negate transaction rollback, then you negated the copy effect. It essentially does nothing. So that's how you kind of work around the activation timing of certain cards that require you to declare stuff or require you to target stuff. So no, you're not targeting during resolution. You still get to perform the targeting during the activation part, even though you haven't fully copied the effect, but you still need to fulfill the requirements of the card. Alright, does that make sense? If it doesn't, leave it down in the comment section. We'll try to get into it a little more. Now let's move on. Question number 2, we're going to keep it simple here. We have in the graveyard a transaction rollback and a copy of Harpy's Featherstorm. And so the opponent essentially has a free turn ahead of them, but there are these two trap cards in the way. Player A decides to activate the transaction rollback, pay half their life to essentially skip the opponent's turn by hopefully resolving the Harpy's Featherstorm. So he banishes it, pays half his life, targets the Harpy's Featherstorm, tells the opponent, hey, now you can't do anything, I don't have to pay cost. So here we are, you're stuck under Harpy's Featherstorm. Player B says, hey, you can't do that. Well, you call a judge, you're the judge, this one's pretty simple, you have 3 seconds to answer this. Who is correct in this case? 3, 2, 1, 0. Player A is the fool for attempting to copy Harpy's Featherstorm without any monsters on the field. If you did control a Wind Wing Beast on the field, then yes, that activation would have been legal, but in this particular presented case, there's no Wind Wing Beast on the field, so Transaction Rollback will basically target an illegal card in this case because it doesn't meet the condition. If you're going to be copying the activated effect of a trap card, even though you don't have to pay cost, condition is different. You still have to meet the condition of that card for its timing, for the required monsters. Essentially, you're copying every part of its activated condition as well. So you can't just blindly go say, hey, oh, I just don't like my opponent's attack position monster. I'm going to copy Drowning Mirror Force to spin it all back into the deck. Well, your opponent still needs to declare a direct attack for you to copy Transaction Rollback onto that. Or say you don't like your opponent having a bunch of monsters on the field and they're in battle phase. Oh, I'm just going to copy Torrential Tribute to blow them all up. See, you can't do that, again, because they haven't summoned a monster, you're not in the proper timing. So, no, if you're going to be activating a trap card that's going to copy another trap card, you still have to meet the condition. The activation condition still needs to be met. Question number 3. This is going to be a basic one, but you're going to see quite a bit of this happen probably during the initial release of Transaction Rollback. So we have a player combining 2 level 6s into an Xyz monster of Beatrice, Lady of the Eternal, and through the first effect, detach, sending the Transaction Rollback into the graveyard, and through the next turn, during the draw phase, they decide to shut down the opponent's turn by throwing in a Ghost Meets Girl, a Masterful Mayakashi Shiranui Saga into the graveyard. If you don't know what that card
What? Tribute one Mayakashi Shin right now. Synchro or Link monster. Neither player can special summon monsters from the hand deck or extra deck for the rest of its turn. You can banish this card from the graveyard and target one of your banished zombies. Oh. So you just the first part. So tributing one of the monsters is a cost. So you don't have to pay the cost, but it still copies. So transaction rollback should work. It's a normal trap. You don't have to pay costs on it, so it still copies the effect.
effect does tribute a Mayakashi or Shiranui Synchro or Link monster. Neither player can special summon monsters from the hand, deck, or extra deck for the rest of the turn. Essentially a floodgate that only allows special summoning from the graveyard. You can still use a Reborn. However, player A does all that. Player B says, hey, you can't do that. And player A says, like, why? That's not an effect. That's a condition. This is very easy. So they argue, call a judge. This one should take you no time extensions whatsoever. You answer on the spot, and you tell them, yeah, no, Ghost Meets Girl, that particular card, the cost is to use the Mayakashi and Shiranui Synchro monster or Link monster. That is a cost, so you don't have to pay that at all. But you do get to copy that particular effect and resolve it, and the effect is to lock people out, and that is not a condition. That is not like Gimmick Puppet locking you via a condition. This is part of the effect. Of course, someone's going to be pretty salty, and this is why I did wonder why Beatrice is still allowed because of transaction rollback. Maybe we're in a phase where, hey, we should be able to test it before we ban it.
I want to talk about that. This video is very helpful, by the way. Like all his ruling videos are so helpful. But Beatrice, we all knew transaction rollback was coming out, and Beatrice did not get hit on the list. Here, Tyr can go into Beatrice. All I'm gonna say.
Kind of deal. Who knows? But then there's also the question of D-Barrier. So let's go for another Floodgate-esque card like D-Barrier. What happens when they activate a D-Barrier and then you use Transaction Rollback? Can you Transaction Rollback an already active D-Barrier? And the answer is Yes, you can lock out two things, because transaction rollback isn't technically activating another copy of Dimensional Barrier, you're merely just copying the effect of Dimensional Barrier, so it's all okay. You are still within the restriction of Dimensional Barrier, and you get to lock out both Exceeds and Synchro, maybe Rituals plus Fusions, whatever the case may be. Yes, you get to lock out two particular typing. So transaction rollback is going to make that particular disgusting play a bit of a reality. That's it for the basic breakdown of the three questions, but before we get into the complicated scenario, first of all, check out mstmerch.com if you want to help support this channel. Really appreciate it. It keeps basically all of this stuff running. If you guys need your card game essentials, such as sleeves, oversleeves, foil sleeves, I got you covered with the Carbon series. If you want, tournament level sleeves, white, pinks, black, they all feel like PC white, classic PC white. They feel like it. Very, very smooth shuffle feel. Then go for the Carbon series. If you want to get some beautiful foil sleeves designed by me, yes, I designed them myself, and you want to protect them, go for the bundles. They're really, really awesome. Now, there's also the product that helps you sort your collection, the Divider Kit. That's the thing that kickstarted the entire store, and I'm really happy for the support. Even stores have bought them as well to sort their own store collection. So if you guys want to sort your stuff, go get the Divider Kit. We've got mats as well, and we got new upcoming products, new lines, new colors for the Carbon series, new foil sleeves coming up, so you guys definitely don't want to miss out. Check out mstmerch.com. Thank you for your support, and here we go. Let's get into the complicated stuff. Transaction rollback in the graveyard plus Eradicator Epidemic Virus. This is a complicated one. So the players have set this particular scene up, and player A doesn't care if they're Sky Striker, Cash Tira, or Rescue Ace. They just want to blow up every single spell card in the opponent's hand. So they go for Eradicator Epidemic Virus in the graveyard, and they are going to activate Transaction Rollback, copy the Epidemic Virus, the EEV, and try to call spell cards. And the opponent's like, hey, you can't do that. This is a complicated scenario. There's two outcomes to this entire thing. You guys have 5 seconds.
Okay. You will have to have, you will have to, no, because attribute the Dark Monster is a cause. No, it's not a cause. But you will have to have a Dark Monster with 2,500 attack to be able to meet the full condition of this. Because declaring the one type of card is a comma and you would still be able to do it.
Seconds to give me an answer. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. So there's two outcomes to this because there's a conflicting ruling, and it's mainly because of Eradicator Epidemic Virus's card text in TCG, specifically stating its own card activation. We mentioned this: if a card references its own card activation and you try to copy it via an effect, you're not allowed to because there is no card activation. You can't essentially fulfill the resolution properly. And so the card I'm going to put into reference is Extinction on Schedule. So you can use Trap of Darkness, Transaction Rollback to copy it if you're targeting directly as a card activation. If you have like these cards set onto the field, Transaction Rollback, you're copying your opponent's copy of Extinction on Schedule. That's completely fine because even though it mentions this card's activation, you are still under a card activation when you do the whole copying effect, because you essentially did flip the card from face down on the field onto the field face up, or you activate it onto the field basically from a point where it was basically not public knowledge. Okay, so you've activated a card. However, because extinction on schedule, now the card text states that during the main phase you pay 2,000 life points, you ignore that part, make both players send all cards they control to the graveyard at the end of the third battle phase after this card's activation. Now, because it mentions this card activation, Transaction Rollback's second effect, as well as Junk Collector's effect, they can't target Extinction on Schedule via that effect because you can't really mimic the card activation. So that particular part of the card text matters. But what that translates to for Eradicator Epidemic Virus is that, until the end of their third turn after this card's activation, you can't fulfill that in TCG. This is something that's mentioned specifically in TCG. It applies to Deck Devastation Virus as well. So, in other words, the graveyard effect of Transaction Rollback, you can't use that to copy an EEV. So a judge can rule that, hey, you can't use Transaction Rollback to target Epidemic Eradicator in the graveyard. You can still use it while it's on the field to copy your opponent's copy, but not your own copy. But there's a possibility that the judge can rule that you can target Epidemic Eradicator Virus because there is a conflict. It's because there's a different ruling stating, hey, can I activate Labyrinth Barrage by chaining it to Eradicator Epidemic Virus by declaring spells? Yes, you can. But then somehow within the answer of this particular ruling, it says that Transaction Rollback, either its card or its second effect, it can copy it, and you can even use Junk Collector to copy it as well. That's where the conflict stems from. That's why you probably have to ask a head judge. And I know, the whole thing was a giant word soup. If you don't get it, let's see if we can try to explain it down in the comment section. But essentially, ask your head judge whether you're not allowed to do it. Depending on which event that you go to, it may or may not change. They should be staying consistent overall in TCG. But this is something that you're going to need to ask a judge on, just to clarify on the event. That is why this one's complicated. I don't expect people to know this like the back of their hands, so just be very careful within this one, because the card text, this card's activation versus copying an effect via a card effect, yeah, it's a lot. It's a lot. And that's it for this.
Alright, y'all. Hope y'all enjoyed the video. I hope this was very helpful to a lot of players. Um, Definitely going to be doing more reaction videos now since I have a new setup. Let me know what y'all think about it in the comment section below. Excuse me. But thank y'all for tuning in. Until next time, peace.